are talking 47 metres down, Uncaged. Like the first movie, this one is once again directed by Johannes. And this one is most notable, I think, for having some daughters of famous kind of actors. You've got Corinne Foxx, her daughter of Jamie Foxx, and you've also got Sistine Rose Stallone, daughter of obviously Sylvester Stallone. In this movie, you've also got Sophie Nélisse and Brianne. The most recognisable actor, I think, is John Corbett. Anyway, this is like it's kind of sequel in name only, really, because it doesn't have the actual connection to the first movie. Outside, it's about sharks and being trapped certain amount of metres down, I suppose. But the story focuses on these four female friends that decide they're going to go to explore this kind of like cave system, which has got all these kind of like, you know, Mayan statues and stuff, and they happen to found that these kind of like these sharks that have kind of evolved under there to be blind, and they are now trapped underneath due to a cave-in and have to try and find a way out. That's your basic plot premise. So now I've got to say, I've got to talk about the first 47 metres down, because it's fairly important specifically to this channel. I love the first 47 metres down, and on my review, which is my biggest ever review on the channel in regards to viewing figures, it's got nearly over 500,000 views. It's my biggest review I've ever done on the channel, and they actually used a quote from my review on the trailer in the States, which was quite fun. Anyway, I really love that film. I genuinely do. I actually thought it was the best shark movie outside of the original Jaws film. So, what works in this film? I feel there are elements here that work in this film movie as they did in the first. There are some great kind of tense moments, and I feel that's what benefited the first movie, and I feel that is apparent in this movie as well. There's a bigger cast here, which I think is better because you have, quite frankly, more victims to chew on. So that was quite good. I feel it's a tad more gory than the first movie, and maybe it's a little bit more violent. And I do quite like the idea of having this kind of lost in this kind of cave system. I thought was quite fun. It actually reminded me of The Descent. It's essentially The Descent with sharks. So and again, the sharks kind of being blind, I thought was a kind of a little bit of a neat kind of plot twist. Although I have a problem with the sharks, and we'll come on to. And I think the cast do a pretty good job as well. It's kind of well shot. There's some beautiful locations, etc. So I do think as a shark film, it's probably an above average shark film. But I do not think it's as good as the first one. This movie, I feel like I have a lot more critiques within the first movie. Number one, I mentioned the shark. If sharks have been evolved to live in a cave system, they would not be that size, because we are talking about limited space, not a huge food source. They simply wouldn't grow to the size of sharks that they are in this movie. Now that, along with a few other things, makes this movie a little bit more silly than the first movie. And I know the first movie maybe has some, if you're a scuba diver, you can critique some of the kind of like the inaccuracies. But I felt the first movie was very believable, and that's one of its key strengths. This one, I don't think that is the case. I feel this movie is just borders on a little bit more silly, because, like I've said, the sharks, for example, they just wouldn't exist. And a few other bits and pieces as well, the kind of like there's a conceit for why they get trapped in there. It just is a little bit more silly, and I feel just pushes the kind of the boundaries of believability a little bit too far. I gotta say, I didn't think the CGI was as good. Now, I will say, that I think the CGI in the first movie, the shark effects were flawless. I've heard people say they didn't like the effects in the first movie, but I challenge anyone to point out a shot where the effects don't look good. But in this movie, I feel that there's some obvious kind of CGI shots, which is a little odd, because I would have assumed this is a bit of a bigger budget movie, because the first movie was originally made to be a straight-to-DVD film. But nonetheless, although the effects aren't bad, we're not talking Asylum level sci-fi movie channel type effects here. Just a couple of instances where I don't think the effects are particularly amazing. There's also attempts here to recreate elements from the first movie. Now, one of the most famous shots from the first movie is where there's a scene where they ascend and they have like a red light, and you see the sharks kind of swimming around them, and they've essentially recreated that scene for this movie because that was such an iconic image for the first movie. And they've obviously got it worked on that one. Well, we want to do it again here, and it just seems like a little bit of a cheap shortcut to me. And I have to say as well, I like the fact that we have a bigger cast, but some of them may have written, you know, cannon fodder across their chest. I mean, it's just, they are there simply to be cannon fodder. And again, mild spoilers of the first movie here, you didn't know really who was going to survive on the first film. I think that you felt genuine danger for the two sisters, and maybe who's going to survive? Are they both going to survive? Are they both going to die? You don't know. In this movie, I feel it's pretty obvious who is going to live, because we have some massive cannon fodder characters that are there, that are just there to have kills on screen and to have a kind of a body count. And that's kind of like, that's amazing. I mean, the other thing I suppose is with the finale, doesn't even involve the sharks that we have kind of been with in the whole movie. There's just other sharks. And again, I thought that was a little bit of an odd choice. It's not necessarily a critique, I suppose, but it was a little bit of an odd choice. Anyway, so overall, I feel this is still an above average shark movie. If you look at the kind of the pantheon of, you know, killer shark movies that are available, this to me still sits on the above average mark and is an enjoyable film in its own right, but I do not think it is as a well done film as the first one. So I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.